Sync, also known as Paigan 0, and I'll be your host today for audio syncing in Mandelbulber. All you'll need is a copy of Mandelbulber, a copy of Virtual Dub would be good, and also you're going to need a WAV file for the audio you'd like to sync with Mandelbulber. Pull up a chair and let's get to it. Okay, there's a couple of things we're going to do to get Mandelbulber ready. Alright, we've got the basic Mandelbulb. We're going to hit auto refresh. We're going to go over to image. Let's see, do I have enough space to see? Yeah, image 19 by 80. We'll go half of that. Alright, 960 by 540. So we've changed the size. We got the Mandelbulb. We're going to change the background to black. Go over to effects, background, take off a 3-color gradient, and apply a basic black background like so. We're going to go over here to the render pane, object pane and global parameters, and we're going to put on a repeat at the X and the Y and the Z of 4. There we go. And we'll make some keyframes. And for instructions on how to do keyframing, see my keyframing in Mandelbulber video. In the meantime, we're just going to add 4 keyframes, which is technically 5 because the first one's 0. And let's add a rotation in here, add the keyframe animation, pull this down, and rotate the X and the Y through, let's take it through 4 keyframes, 2 full rotations, and let's do that for the Y as well. 4 keyframes, 720. Alright. And we'll get a quick animation folder here set up. Pardon me while I go to my H drive here. I already have audio syncing set up. I'm going to set up a new folder, toot, and away we go. Alright, I happen to also have some other servers I want to bring in here for instructions on that. See my other video that I haven't made yet, net rendering for Mandelbulber. Boom, there's 2 other machines I have all set to render for us here. I'm also going to go up to file here real quick, and just because I'm doing test renders, I'm going to make sure that I have alpha layers and Z buffer turned off. Alright, we are ready to go. I'm going to run through 400 frames in here real quick, and boom. Now we see the simple Mandelbulb rotating with other Mandelbulbs in the back rotating as well. That's going to generate 400 frames for us real quickly. And okay, so now we have a simple, I'm going to finish rendering that, show animation, embiggen that, and let's run it out. And so you see we have a rotating Mandelbulb with several Mandelbulbs rotating in the background. That took us all of like just 2 minutes to set up really quickly. Alright, we're only rotating in the X and Y axis rather than the Z, and should actually do a perfect loop. Since we did 720 degrees for all those rotations. Let's see, we're coming to the end of it, and yeah, perfect loop. I'm going to do one more quick thing to this Mandelbulb just to make it interesting by going over here to Objects and Fractal, and you'll see under the Mandelbulb that we're using here, we have angle offset. I'm going to add, and beta angle offset. I'm going to add both of those to our keyframe animations real quickly. Right click on the beta, add both of them, and then I'm going to pull that down, come over here, interpolate next keyframes. We'll go for 720, the same as we did for the X and Y rotation of the main fractal. At 720. There we go. Now that gives us a internal rotation alpha and beta angle, and it looks something like this. Let me get those ready. Delete out whatever we got in there and go for it. And that'll quickly give us 400 keyframes with it rotating in the X and Y direction and also internally rotating the alpha and the beta. We'll go over here, Fractal. Yeah, well, you see it'll go through in 360 degrees. It'll go for 1 through full rotation, and we did 720, so it's going to go through internally 2 full rotations and then return back to where it started from as a perfect loop. And then we'll stop the server, render out the last couple of frames, and then check it out. So we now have the mandible rotating in the X and Y axes, and also internally in the alpha and beta angle offset. And it's going to be a perfect loop as we're rounding 200. There's halfway through the animation. And then, in fact, with these parameters, we could have just done 200 frames and it'd still be a perfect loop. We'd gain nothing actually by the 400 frames. All right. There's our alpha and beta. And we're going to add some glow here in the volumetric pane of effects. The standard default is 0.2. We're not going to change the color or anything, but we are just going to jack this up to 4 real quick. Turn our auto refresh back on, and you'll see we have glow in the background. If we render out this at our current settings, okay, stopping the server, letting the last couple of frames render out. Now when we kick this up, we see we've got a constant rotating Mandelbulb with rotating Mandelbulbs in the background. It's rotating internally, and it's also rotating on the X and Y axis. And it's got a constant glow. Now this is fairly boring. If you had some music going along with this, there's nothing to sync the music with the action right now. So let's, for example, let's audio sync this glow. That's going to be the most common thing that I personally use to audio sync, and it's the easiest. And it's also, in my humble opinion, one of the best things to audio sync. So let's stop that perfect loop. Let's go ahead and delete out all those images. And let's go over finally and take a look at the animation by sound parameters. Let me go real quick. Looks like I did not add that fog. We add, or excuse me, glow. Add the glow to keyframe animation. Any parameter that we want to audio sync must be added to the animation window. So main glow intensity, and right next to it we'll see animate by sound. We're gonna click on that, and up pops set animation controlled by audio file for parameter main glow intensity. First thing we're going to do is select an audio file, which is easy enough. We're going to navigate to where some audio files are on my computer, and I'm going to open that a little bit wider, and I have a song called 1984, written in 1984, actually written in 1994. We can play the audio real quick, and let's listen to it. As you'll see, and we have 3 panes here. We have the waveform pane that's just lit up with the waveform. Most of you are familiar with how this looks. It's the regular transients, these little spikes here of a standard waveform. Here we have the frequency spectrum. Now if I embiggen this pane, the only thing that really is going to get bigger is this middle frequency spectrum pane. But I can widen it out. So we see frequency spectrum now. Obviously, all of these spikes correspond to various frequencies. I can hold my cursor over there, but I'm not going to see anything because I actually haven't hit enable animation by sound. And we'll get to that in a second. The sound animation chart shows me what kind of spike or transient this waveform will contribute to the parameter. So let me click enable animation by sound, and then that's going to give me some more choices. we can play audio, we can stop, we can delete the audio track. Once enable animation by sound is clicked on, we have the frequency of interest, which goes all the way up to, I believe, 20,000. Yeah. Bandwidth is how wide the slice we're going to take. And we'll talk about addition factor and multiplication factor in a second. Real quickly, we're going to look at the decay filter and smooth filter. Both of these are just a way of smoothing out the attack and the decay of the sound. We won't get into too much of that, but before the top of the spike, there's an arc, and after the top of the spike, there's an arc. If we have the decay filter on, we smooth the decay, which is how fast it, which is after the sound. Smooth filter is approaching it. With them both on, we see a much smoother line, and right here I have it at 2.5, but at the default of 5, we see a very smooth line, and were we to just keep increasing the result of this, we'd get a smoother and smoother line. There's also a binary filter, which strictly turns things on or strictly turns things off. It's either 0 or 1, and then you'll see a bunch of lines. So that's great if you want to just turn something on or turn it off based on a value. And then negative influence is just the opposite value. Instead of adding the value we're adding, we're going to subtract the value that we're playing with. The easy, quickest, best settings that I have seen for audio syncing in about 90% of cases for about 90% of music is going to be the following. Select your music file. Enable animation by sound. Leave frequency of interest alone default. Leave bandwidth alone default. We're going to turn on sound pitch mode, and you'll see now, look at those, how big those spikes are. At the top would be a value of 1, at the bottom be a value of 0. Wherever this graph is along this continuum is what value will be added to the parameter. So for this case, we have a glow intensity of 4, and with a multiplication factor of 1, I'm going to pick addition factor 0. I'm going to turn decay filter on. I'm going to half the strength. I'm going to turn smooth filter on and half the strength. And that will get you a good animation audio sync in about 90% of the cases. You'll see that this wave file goes up and down. The timeline here is divided up into keyframes, in quarter of keyframes, and into seconds. It's a little hard to see, but key 0, 1, 2, 3. If we scroll down here at the bar at the bottom all the way to the end, it'll automatically tell us, per the audio file that we inputted, how many keyframes do we need to render this out. In this case, it's going to be about 43 to render out down here at the time bar. This is the current time, this is the total time. So it's a 2 minute and 26 second audio file. Here we're roughly halfway at the 1 minute point. You'll see that line tells you where you are. This white chunk tells us the wedge that's being used, and then this is the audio file up here. There's really nothing we can do with that graph up there. So your quick settings are select music file, enable audio by sound, standard frequency, standard bandwidth, addition is 0, multiplication is 1, sound pitch mode on, decay filter at half strength, smooth filter of half strength, and you're done. Boom. Now with these settings on the glow intensity, if I delete out all the images, and we're going to render this out here real quick, launch my server, and boom, go. Now when I go over to the effects pane, volumetric glow, I see that the glow intensity is going all the way up to, I see 6, and the low of 4. It even goes all the way up to 7. The default was 4, and it goes all the way up to 7. And I already see that I started out a little bit too bright because I'm not getting much of a dimming and glowing effect, or rather I am getting a glowing effect or a strengthening of the glow, but it's too much. So I don't even have to go any further on this one. I can already go nope. And instead I'm going to go down to this glow intensity and I'm going to put it on a 3. I'm going to interpolate the keyframes with the value of 3 all the way out, and then I'm going to run it again and see if we get a better result this time. I want it to be between, say, 3 and 6. I don't want it to be much brighter. I want this to be about the maximum brightness now. Let's run that real quick and see what we get. That's a lot better. I can see already. I've got some darkness and then I got brightness. I'm going to go ahead and let this render out. It's 400 keyframes. Now I can go here to show animation and it'll show me what I believe is an audio synced file. The glow appears to be brightening and increasing and decreasing, but I can't hear the audio file that it should be set up with. So Mandelbulber is unfortunately unable to display the audio and the this view pane at the same time, so we have to do a workaround. Our workaround is using virtual dub. So as soon as this is finished completely rendering, I will then size 300%, and now so now we are synced up perfectly with the audio and the glow. Mission accomplished. I'm going to go ahead and close that out for now. And we're going to add another parameter. Let's add main light intensity. Let's try that. Let's go over here to the light. And let me turn that down to 0.25. What does that look like? Auto refresh. Now let me add that to my keyframe animation, and there's main light intensity. Here's animate by sound. You'll notice that main glow intensity has a sound file loaded because it's turned black and bolded. So if I go animate by sound, we'll select that 1984 song, enable animation by sound, leave the frequency of interest and the bandwidth alone, turn the addition down, leave multiplication on 1, sound pitch mode on, decay filter at half strength, smooth filter at half strength. Scrub through here, through this, and you'll notice you have a nice good set of transients going up and down, not too jaggedy, not too abrupt. We'll hit OK. Now we should expect delete all those images in my file, add my clients back here real quickly, render it out, and let's see if the main light is in fact going off and on. Okay, it's going at a value of 0.25 at a minimum. What I'm not seeing... I see what I did wrong. No, actually I don't see what I did wrong. Why is that not? I know why. It's a silly thing and it's subtle. We're going to get a little bit different lighting if we go to effects, ray tracing. Instead, we're going to use multiple rays of light map, and we're going to decrease it to just 1, and then that gives us, there we go, a little more light there. So now when we render that out, you'll see a little more difference between the light and the dark areas. There we go. So now we have a glow that's strengthening, and also it's tied with the main light. Sorry, I can't find the light. Now I wish that was increasing a little bit more than that. I'm going to say I want to double that we're going to multiplication factor of 2. So I want that going from 0.25 to 1 if I can. And let's try it again. Let's see what we get. Well, I get a high of 0.6, and that's better. We also have to remember on our audio file, often at the beginning there'll be some silence, and so you won't see anything happen for a bit. In this particular example, I actually clipped off the beginning second of silence in order to give me some immediate audio syncing parameters. Now that's looking a little better. Yeah, we're getting some brightening there. Let me put that in virtual dub and take a listen to it. I gotta get the last couple of frames here real quick. There we go. Should have kept that open, but then it makes it complicated trying to delete when you have files open, and then it'll tell you that you can't delete because the picture is open in virtual dub. Oh yeah. So we have the easiest things in the world. Main light and the glow. But is that all we can do, you ask, Steve? Is that all we can do? No, we can do more. We can do lots of things. We're going to start adding some primitives, and we're just going to start making them dance around to the music as well. We'll go over here to Object, Primitive. Let me add a quick sphere. Sphere is really easy to do. Let me place the sphere there. Turn on auto refresh. See how big this is going to be. Oh, that's really large. Let me turn the radius down here. Boink, boink. All right, now let me first off add the position of the sphere to the keyframes, and let me add the radius. And then I want to audio sync the radius. I want this sphere to get bigger as our sound file hits transients. So essentially, as our audio file gets louder, our ball gets bigger, and as it gets softer, it gets smaller. So radius has been added to the animation parameters. We'll go down here, select audio file 1984, enable audio by sound, sound pitch mode, decay filter at half strength, smooth filter at half strength. We're going to take out the addition and only use multiplication. So why am I only using multiplication rather than and why do I keep addition at 0 every time? Well, the beauty with multiplication is that it is relative. So no matter what the value is that I'm multiplying or adding or morphing or audio syncing, it won't go wildly out of control. As soon as I start adding a real value like 1, this is literally going to add a fraction of the number 1 to my parameter, as opposed to multiplying it by a number. So from 0 to 1, it'll be multiplied, and here from 0 to 1 it'll be added. But the problem with, say, light intensity, if an aux light was at a value of 1, it would be absolutely blinding. It would blind out the whole scene. So you don't need to add anything to it. You want to multiply it or divide by it. So we're going to keep addition factor at 0, although it's definitely times where we'd want to use it. But right now we want to do it as easy as possible. So enable animation by sound, sound pitch mode, and decay and smooth filters at half. We'll hit OK, and then we'll run that out and see what we get. Well, we don't want to just leave that ball there, sorry. We actually want to move that ball around a little bit. So I'm going to leave the first frame and the last frame the same, but here on frame 1, I'm going to place the sphere here. and modify keyframe. 2, I'll place it here, modify keyframe. 3, I want to place it here, and I want to make it really big. So I gotta go back to object, radius. I'm going to crank that up to that size, modify keyframe, and then 4 will take me back to where it was. Alright, now let's try that again. And now we'll see that the ball appears to be getting bigger when the background glow gets brighter and the main light gets brighter. So without dumping it back into virtual dub, I can tell you that we are successful. Those settings at those standard settings that I've showed you will work for so many parameters. So let's let that run out, but let's already we can already tell that works. Just display it real quickly like this, and we see, look at that, it's it appears to be getting bigger according to the music, and it doesn't appear to be too herky-jerky. So we'll consider that a success for now. I'm going to go ahead and delete all that out, and we're going to just add another primitive. We're going to add a torus shape real quick. I've added a torus and set position of torus. We're going to set the position of the torus right there. It's probably going to be too big, so we're going to decrease that down as soon as it, there we go. We'll go to torus radius, have that, and then tube radius. In fact, I'm going to take that down to there. In fact, I'm going to go one more. Actually, no. That's what I want to leave. All right, now I want this tube torus here to also get bigger and smaller along with the music. Now, I have two parameters that I have to morph at the same time. I have to morph both the radius, the torus radius, and the torus tube radius. So I'm going to make sure, first add the position of this throughout, add the value of the torus radius, add the value of the torus tube radius to my animation. So all those three settings have been added down here. We say main primitive torus position, XYZ, the radius, and the tube radius. Let's we'll change the position of that around a little bit, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and add radius. We'll select our file. We'll enable animation by sound, turn on sound pitch mode, and then decay and smooth filters both will be at half strength, which in this case is 2.5. We'll turn off addition factor, and that's it. Except now we have to do that for the radius, torus tube radius as well. Select the file, enable, zero that out, sound pitch mode, decay filter, smooth filter, both at half strength. Okay. All these in bold black parameters here are the ones with an audio file loaded. So now we're morphing or audio syncing the main glow intensity, the main light intensity, the torus radius, the tube radius, and also that should have been the sphere sphere radius. So now what we haven't done is we haven't moved the torus around any. So let's go back up here, leave frames 1 and 4 the same so that it'll make a loop. But here at 1, let's place the torus, say on top, and modify, go to 2, put it over here, modify 3, put it over here, and let's make it bigger. Let's increase the radius. There we go. Modify. And one more thing I'm going to do real quickly, just because I'm having fun here, is I'm going to do the rotation. I'm going to add that to the keyframes, X, Y, and Z rotation of the torus. And I'm going to go ahead and morph that through 4 keyframes, and we'll do 720, and I'll do the X and the Y. Just to make it a little more interesting, because it's really easy to do. Delete all those out. Make sure we have some server or clients going and render that out. Now you'll see that the torus is getting bigger and smaller. It's also spinning around, it's moving, the ball's spinning around. So we have now glow, light intensity, and the torus and the ball all morphing. I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to let this render out, and then we're going to add one more thing. Okay, we're going to stop the server, render out the last couple of frames. This time I'm going to dump it all into Virtual Dub, and let's take a listen. Now our torus is a little random, probably too big, but we have successfully looped the torus and our audio synced all those things together. Let's do one more thing. Let's go into the object. Go into the object, into the fractal. We're going to add a quick material here. Let's see. Let's just new material. And it'll take all of 5 seconds, honestly, to turn this into some glass. We'll just literally turn the reflectance to 1, and we're done. Go back here to objects, to my primitives, and we'll make all my primitives glassy shaped like that, and there we go. Voila. And checking this out, let's take a look. Oh yeah, so we've got the torus and the sphere both reflecting the background. We could play with that and add its reflective brightness to the audio syncing. We can also audio sync multiple audio files, but we've been using the same audio file throughout. Of my little tune here, I could have just isolated the bass, or just the drums, or just the snare hit, for example, and have it audio synced. In this example, I've used the same audio file throughout, but you could easily do multiple audio files. The only problem is Mandelbulber can't cut and slice to a specific point in an audio file, so you're going to have to use an external program like Audacity, or a digital analog workstation like Pro Tools, or there's a million of them. Anyway, you're going to have to chop up the sound file yourself separately, and then feed it into Mandelbulber as a single track. That track can be anything, and then, as I mentioned earlier, you can use WAV files, you can use MP3 if you're using Linux, but in Windows we're strictly going to use WAV files. So you can use FLAC and OGS as well, but there's really no advantage to doing that. It audio syncs just fine to a WAV file. Now, one thing we haven't looked at is using the audio syncing on a parameter of the fractal itself, and the problem with doing that is that it's very difficult to get motion that looks cool and is smooth. And particularly over a long video, you get pretty much a strobe light effect. But let me take a quick example of maybe something successful, and let's take the power of this Mandelbulb. Let's add it to the keyframe real quickly. We'll add our sound file, as we've been doing throughout, to the fractal power. Select our audio file, get in there with our music, and we'll do our same settings we've been doing throughout, with sound pitch mode and decay filter at 1/2 and smooth filter at 1/2. And I know from experience, actually, that in morphing the fractal itself, I want to go a little bit smoother, so I'm going to go the default of 5 instead of going 2.5. Unlike lights and primitive shapes and sizes. The fractal itself, as it morphs, needs to be a little smoother. In fact, we might even take that up to 10 or another value, but we'll keep it at 5 for a second. Definitely want to take the addition factor off of there, and the multiplication factor, I may even want to take it down to half. Let's see how that works. I also, so that's going to take my power and take me from 9 to say 12, and do it in time to the music. And then we see a smoother Mandelbulb. What's our power looking at? 11, 10, 12. That's about perfect. That's exactly about I wanted. I wanted to go from about 9 to 12, and it looks like I'm going about 10 to 12, but that's fine. All right, we'll let that render out, and then we'll take a look at it on the other side. So one thing we can do, which we haven't done yet, and I need to talk about, is increasing the frames per keyframe. Now, one good advantage to doing that is the audio syncing will continue as it is. Everything will slow down, but the audio syncing will continue at the same speed. So in this case, I want to take that to 400, and we'll just skip the rendering this all together, and I'll come through on the other side. Okay, and now we have 1600 frames, and the Mandelbulbs are all moving slower, but the primitives are moving slower, yet they're getting bigger, still in time to the music. The lights and glow is still in time to the music. So even though we've quadrupled the frame rate, so we've gone, which means we've essentially slowed everything down, everything is still audio synced to the music. We could do one keyframe and have it 40,000 frames, and as long as it's audio synced, it would still morph in time to the music and be interesting. Audio syncing is pretty much the only way you can do animations using just one frame, because otherwise you don't have a change anywhere. But I have done that before, had just one single keyframe and then audio synced everything throughout it. Or let's add up virtual dub again, pull in our audio file. I can't click. I've got a cat on my lap and I can't click now. Increase that size to 300%. Cat purring in the background. Alright, increase that to 300% and we're ready to rock it out. What do we got? We see the glow and the main light and the sizes of the primitives and the power of the fractal, all audio synced to the song. A little bit strobe lighting. I could use a little work on this one, but that is the overall proof of concept.
Alright, that was audio syncing Mandelbulber. I'm Steve Fink, your host. This is Geo the Cat. Good luck. We barely scratched the surface on what you can do with Mandelbulber. Barely scratched the surface. There's a whole lot more you can do with audio syncing. We didn't get into tuning in individual tones, and we didn't get into specific tracks or stems, as the kids call them. But that's enough for now. That'll get you started, and hopefully I got you some quick settings to get you going quickly and get the down and dirty. Let's get in frame here, Geo. Bye-bye. See you later. Join us on Facebook, and I'll see you in the Fractal realm.